Coming up next on the voice of Alabama politics, Britt in at BCA. Also, the V team takes a look at questionable ethics opinions. And the candidates make their closing arguments.
Is it possible the two youths...
Two what? What was that word?
What word?
Two what?
What?
Did you say utes?
Yeah, two youths.
What is a ute?
Oh, excuse me, Your Honor. Two youths.
Utes, more like kooks. But hey, it's Alabama. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to the voice of Alabama politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V team. Welcome all.
Hello.
How you doing?
Happy Time Change Day.
Oh, yes,
that's
yes,
right.
thank
That was
you.
wretched.
Yeah, no.
Why don't you just cut my throat with a dull knife? Instead of waking up at 3:30 now, I'll be waking up at 4:30 or get an extra hour's sleep.
Or 2:30.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whichever one's the worst one.
You know, it's, yeah.
Anyway, it's a wretched time of the year. I know what time to get up and go to bed. Leave the time alone, but they're not going to do it. Jack, sort of a phenomena. It looks like it has occurred. The Business Council of Alabama, the executive committee there, the 12 men and woman executive committee, voted unanimously to recommend Katie Britt as the new head of BCA. Katie Britt being Senator Richard Shelby's chief of staff, and a young woman, under 40, very talented, but it was a really unusual or a
Bold pick.
That's a good-
I think she's got great credentials. She doesn't fit the mold of Bill O'Connor and Wynton Blunt and some of the people who've been chairs and CEOs in times past. But I think it's a very interesting move. I think it breathes some new life into BCA. Katie has got a great reputation. She's universally liked as far as I know.
Yeah.
I think it's a good choice. It's an interesting choice, but it's a good choice.
Susan, we're particularly fond of Katie Britt. We couldn't be more proud of having her in any position of making our state better. But I know when you heard the news, you were particularly moved.
Oh, I was so excited yet again. Not only is she talented and wonderful and we love her, she's broken yet another glass ceiling. The Iron-Jawed Angels will be so proud of her. And we are. We're just so thrilled that she gets this opportunity to go and breathe some fresh life into BCA. Well liked. I think she's going to do really great in the legislature with trying to move BCA agendas forward and in a delicate way.
Which, we talk all the time about we have to bring on the next generation of talent. That just happened.
Yeah, it did, and I think it's fantastic that not only do we have somebody that's young leading such an important organization, but also somebody that's a woman. I mean, that can't be understated either. And one other thing that I would like to say is I think some people are going to question whether or not she has the business acumen to run this organization, but I just want to remind people that the main job of this organization is to lobby on behalf of businesses and to do political things for businesses, and she definitely has the chops to do that and has all kinds of experience that will
and the connections in D.C.
Yeah, exactly.
Strong connections.
Well,
in
I
D.C.
mean, Jack, you know this. You don't become the CEO. I mean, the chief of staff for the head of appropriations or Richard Shelby, and not have your political chops
Your ducks
together.
are in a row, absolutely, absolutely. Trial by fire.
Yeah,
So,
and her husband Wesley.
Oh, he's a great guy.
He's a great guy. He used to be about 6'4" and about 320. We hear he's down about, he's like 6'4" and 200 or something like that.
Something
Look,
like
very
that.
stealth. Also, they have 2 beautiful children,
They do.
and who grace our refrigerator.
I have for years.
But we are very proud of him. And Wesley Britt is very talented himself,
He is indeed.
ex-Alabama football player, offensive lineman, and New England Patriots, right, Jack? One of the things that we tackled earlier this week, Chip, was this questionable ethics opinion. You know, about 3 weeks ago, the Ethics Commission, Alabama Ethics Commission, issued an advisory opinion that said that they could collapse offenses of the Fair Campaign Practice Act. They could take an offense of, say, 4 and collapse it into 1.
Yeah.
They could do that with the fines. Now, the statute says that they can do that with fines, but there's nothing that says they can do that with offenses. Now, the Secretary of State and Attorney General Steve Marshall have finally come forward and said, this is a bad opinion, we need to rehear it.
And Merrill has said that before, but I think what's surprising about this is Marshall coming forward and saying the same thing and joining this. You know, that's just it. This whole situation is very odd to me because we've looked at an ethics commission that has refused to stand up and do anything about enforcing the laws, and then they come along and pretend that they have the authority to do this. And I think it's good that Merrill and Marshall are both saying that they need to take a look at that advisory opinion because there's just no way that matches up with what's in the law.
Well, and two, it gives them the opportunity to pick and choose who they want to collapse offenses for. They may, you know, decide that this candidate over here, they should be charged with all 5. Or this candidate over here, well, it's okay for them. We can't have the Ethics Commission redefining the laws as they're written.
I don't know why it would be okay for you to collapse these things into one thing, because then what's the point if you break the law once or if you break it 20 times, if you're collapsing it into one charge?
Exactly.
Well, and given the way the statute reads currently, if you have 4 civil offenses, it can become a criminal offense. Now, what they're saying is, well, you could have, like Chip says, you could have 10, we'll collapse it into 1 or 4.
Well, you know, like, for example, if you file your campaign report late 4 times, but it's the same offense, I can kind of see some of this, but some of these people are willful and wanton in it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing you have to look at, like a candidate that gets a contribution in September that he or she doesn't want to be on their report, then they wait till after the election to report it, and that's not cool.
What if you took illegal funds and you did it 5 times? Can they collapse that down to 1?
Well, they might be looking at doing. I don't think it's right.
I don't think that's right.
It really doesn't matter if you were wanton or not, because the law says that unless you prove that you weren't wanton, the presumption is that you were intentionally violating the law.
Well, we've devoted no less, and I've been on this show a little over 4 years, we have devoted no less than 50 segments to the crooked Alabama Ethics Commission. And it's still the same bunch of bozos up there that are skirting the law and opening the floodgates to all kind of future problems.
I mean, why do we have ethics laws? Why do we have campaign finance
Abolish them,
laws
save those millions,
abide by them?
Put it into the AG's white-collar crime unit.
Yeah, well, and you know, here's a real thought that I don't know if anybody's thought of, but if you look at it, the Ethics Commission, they get their money is by statute, so they can't. No one can take their funding away from them. Nobody can give them more favor. Why don't we do that for the white-collar crime unit at the Attorney General's office? Set their budget so that, like, a Mike Hubbard can't take their budget away, or an Attorney General can't take their budget away just because they don't like what they're doing. Wouldn't that be
Good idea?
Well, that would be a counterbalance, finally.
Yeah. All right, we're going to leave it right there. We're actually celebrating 5 years of the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and opinions.
He's a bald guy, and sometimes he kind of shouts when he talks.
I'm Will Ainsworth.
A small businessman who will grow 21st century jobs and will be a loud voice to help existing Alabama businesses.
I'm Will Ainsworth.
Ainsworth is the husband of a pre-K teacher He'll expand voluntary pre-K programs and speak out for classroom technologies.
I'm Will Ainsworth.
Always bald, sometimes loud. Will Ainsworth will take his job seriously, not himself.
You'll never guess what 400,000 people in the U.S. were using when they crashed their cars last year. No, not this. This. Distracted driving will kill you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Hey, I'm Rick.
And I'm Bubba from the Rick and Bubba Show. And if you know anything about us, you know we like to have fun.
However, there's one thing that's no laughing matter. We believe that everyone should be registered to vote, and they should have a qualified government-issued photo ID.
In order to have your voice heard and your vote counted, you must be registered to vote and have a photo ID.
Join Bubba and me and register to vote, and let's work together to make Alabama all it can be.
2/3 of drivers who died in car crashes chose to ignore this warning. Seatbelts save lives. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Chip, you wrote a story this week that showed how the Republicans are overwhelmingly winning in the cash donation category. And, it's just amazing. If you've got an R by your name, you can raise a lot of money from some very big donors.
It's not surprising that the Republicans are winning in the fundraising numbers, but what is kind of surprising to me is that Bob Vance is far outraising Tom Parker in the race for Chief Justice, but that is the only race of the 6 major statewide races where a Democrat's outraising a Republican.
Now, the one thing that is of interest, Susan, is that the Democrats have a lot more individual donors.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes by almost double.
Oh, yeah.
If not more, of the individual donors to Democrats as opposed to Republicans, where Democrat will raise $100,000 with 15 people, where the Republican will raise it with 1.
Jack, he was talking about that Judge Bob Vance is probably quadruple the amount of money that Judge Tom Parker has raised. Don't think it's going to make a lot of difference, does it?
I think it'll make it a little closer than normal. I mean, Bob Vance is very well respected. Some people think Tom Parker's a kook. He was, aligned with Roy Moore. I know him personally. I like Tom. He's a good guy. But, I don't think money in that race is really going to matter. Although you had some former Republican Supreme Court justices that came out for Vance in the last couple of weeks, which is interesting to me. But I don't think you're going to beat him.
No, I don't. I think it'd be very hard to beat Tom
But
Parker.
let me say this. You talk about Republicans being able to raise money. Incumbent Republicans can raise money.
Right. That's right.
Incumbent Democrats can raise money. There just happen to be more incumbent Republicans. Because I have run campaigns with Republicans against incumbent Republicans, and raising money is nothing less than a major chore.
Because people want to bet on the incumbent.
Winning
right?
horse.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know I saw something this week where it was a report that AEA was back in the game as far as making campaign contributions, some $2 million during this cycle, and they're 80.
Excuse me.
The big portion of it all went to Republicans. So that horse.
Well, they've kind of endorsed the trial lawyer philosophy that if you can't beat them, join them. We're going to give money to Republicans who at least give us an ear when we come by on an issue.
A lot of people do that. Hospital Association.
Yeah. I mean, you've got people that have voted against want to vote against Obamacare, will not expand Medicaid under the Affordable
Basically,
Care Act.
what we're saying is all associations are whores.
It's the second oldest profession, right?
It is.
I would just say that Democrats have kept pace more than I would have expected.
They have
throughout this.
I think the Doug Jones victory gave them a lot of hope.
Yeah.
And I want to bring this up. We've seen, especially like Martha Roby, and I think even Mo Brooks, and a few of the big congressional candidates, and even Kay Ivey. They keep spending big money, Susan, even though the polling shows they should be comfortably in the lead.
Yeah, there's been a really big push in the last couple of weeks. A lot of money going into advertising, promotional materials that you would think if there's a 20-point lead that they wouldn't be doing. There's a lot of backlash, I know, to some of the stories that have been coming out that you would think that they would have just been quiet. But I don't know what they're saying.
It seems like they don't have the same philosophy about spending money as they have about debates, because their philosophy about debates is we're so far ahead that we don't need to debate.
Well, when
when
you're paying for advertising, you control the message.
Oh, yeah,
in a debate, you may not control.
But
the
a lot of people would want to save that money for later.
Yeah.
Well,
but it keeps their name out there because congressmen have to run every
2 years. Yeah, that's all they do is.
Well, and I heard somebody in Gadsden tell me last week, said, "Why the hell is Dale Marsh all over the TV up here?"
Because he's running for Senate.
Well, that's what I said.
Senator Marsh.
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote a story this week about the duty of the press is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And we were talking about it earlier. And Jack, I think the reason I wrote that is because we're not here to praise politicians. We don't hold big galas to give them awards and all that. We're here to hold them accountable. Now, if they do good stuff, we're going to report it. We are by nature adversarial.
I mean, it's so important to remember that, because there's all this talk about how negative the press is, and they never write anything good anymore, and we get the same, criticism.
Yeah.
But that's not the job. There are good things that happen every day, but those aren't news. News is when bad things happen and when we try to hold people accountable, and it's so important to remember.
Well, I mean, you look at a politician, somebody's kissing their backside every minute of the day. So when you point out facts that do not exactly comport with their vision of how wonderful they are, that's just the facts. Get used to it. Grow up or get in another profession. But what these guys want to do is bellyache and whine, and all we're doing is pointing out the facts.
Well, what's interesting to me in Alabama is how thin-skinned these damn politicians are.
I know.
It's incredible. It sounds like a TB ward up here.
Yeah, it sounds like a lung ward.
Anyway, it's amazing when you say something, because I have a radio show, and if I say something that I catch hell all the time but I'm like, you put yourself out there, you're subject to criticism.
Yeah. Well, I know Susan and I have been accused of being the devil, and some people,
aren't you?
Yeah, but you know what? In some instances, it took the devil to get the job done.
Well, we're just doing the Lord's work. That's all I can say. I do want to get to one last thing real quick. For the last 9 years, the Bentley administration started this. They take $35,000 chip,
Million.
$35 million out of the roads and bridges to pay the judiciary, which should have enough money to pay for itself.
It should have enough money to pay for itself, but apparently they don't think so. Yeah. And this is money that was supposed to be earmarked for roads and bridges, which I would remind people that we regularly get D's and C's and F's on the safety and quality of our roads and bridges. But I think that's outrageous.
Yep. Well, that's where it is. We have to leave it right there. You're watching The V, our 5-year anniversary, right here. We'll be right back with more news and analysis.
You'll never guess what 400,000 people in the U.S. were using when they crashed their cars last year. No, not this. This. Distracted driving will kill you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
I am the proud mother of Ethan Everman. Ethan has autism, diagnosed when he was around 4. It was a really tough time for us. We went to go get speech therapy and ABA therapy and realized that none of it was covered, which was really amazing to us. Tom Watley decided that he needed to try to make this bill pass, and he did. And because of Tom, children now get the therapy that they need, and he was a voice for the children in Alabama who didn't have a voice.
2/3 of drivers who died in car crashes chose to ignore this warning. Seatbelts save lives. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
back to the V, the voice of Alabama politics. Susan, we spoke with Secretary of State John Merrill earlier this week, and he is predicting a 35 to 40% turnout for the general election this Tuesday.
He is, and that's pretty strong. I mean, I think in our specials, the last couple we had something around 25% turnout. A 35% turnout will represent around 1 million people across the state. There's not a lot of hotly contested races this time.
Not statewide.
Not statewide,
no.
but there's a couple. I think you've got Johnny McMorrow and Stutz up in North Alabama, and then you've got the Craig Ford and Andrew Jones in Etowah County. Those are going to turn out some voters there.
Now, Jack, both Larry Stutz, Dr. Larry Stutz, he's the incumbent senator from up there, and Johnny McMorrow, longtime Democrat representative from that area. That area originally belonged to Roger Bedford, and Stutz beat him by like 53 votes. You think Johnny Mack has a good shot up there?
I don't think it's impossible at all for Johnny Mack to win. Stutz has been kind of a controversial figure. I certainly know you've reported on him a time or two. I don't know much about him, but you know, when you won in 2010, and I think, is that when he won?
He won in 2014. Yeah.
I think people were ready for Bedford to go at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Johnny McMorrow would give him a really good run for his money.
Yeah.
And Stutz is not like that well, not even in that area, and not even in the Senate. So I think that's gonna play a big part in that.
I don't have any idea about the Jones and Craig Ford race.
That's an interesting, Susan.
It's an interesting race. Of course, you know, Craig Ford has traditionally run as a Democrat, ran into some issues with the leadership, decided this time to run as an independent, running against Andrew Jones, who basically has, you know, he's grew up on a farm and has a business, but has no political background. So that's going to be interesting. The problem I think that Craig's going to have is there are a lot of people in Etowah County are going to think that they vote straight ticket Democrat and vote for Craig.
And that's one thing we learned this week, Chip, that made clear by the Secretary of State. You can vote straight Republican or straight Democrat, but then you can go back and you can circle in a candidate's name and it still counts.
Yeah, I mean, if you pick a specific person on your ballot after you mark straight party voting, that'll override the straight party for that particular race.
Yeah. I think I did not know that. I think it's a brilliant idea.
I just wanted to say something else about the turnout. If he's predicting 35 to 40, we're saying that's pretty, I mean, it is pretty good in terms of normal Alabama elections, but back in 2014, which was the last time we had statewide elections and midterms, the voter turnout was 39.8%. So it's not that much better.
No, and it's really, as Jack would say, it's wretched.
It's bad.
That means that maybe 20% of the population actually determines who runs the state.
Well, if people sit home, they get what they deserve.
Yeah.
I don't want people that are not educated about their vote to actually vote.
Well, you don't think that's who's voting?
I know, but, you know, we don't think a great abundance of them.
And to John Merrill's credit, the number of registered voters since 2014 has jumped drastically. Like, I was looking at Lee County's numbers the other day. In 2014, there were 86,000 people registered in Lee County to vote. Now it's 116,000. So that's a huge increase. And I wonder how much that is across the state.
Well, I think we've added some 150,000 new voters since, you know, in the last year or so. Now, are they Republicans? Are they Democrats? I don't know how they're going to vote.
A lot of people that are in Lee County, I don't know how many, but a lot of people have left Montgomery because public schools here suck so bad. They've gone over to Lee County where there's good public schools.
Yeah. You know, I think, you know, we're right now we're faced where there's apathy. There's no real energy on the Democratic side, or does anybody see any energy out there?
It has been
No,
so
none.
quiet.
In fact, our radio station is quiet. You know, in the primary, it was just like every ad was political, but nobody's running ads, and the governor's race is boring. I think Waltz has not found his way, and Kay really hadn't done anything. So, I mean, there's not a lot of interest.
No.
And that drives voter turnout down.
Yeah. Well, I think there's some races in Jefferson County that could be competitive, Democrat to Republican, and some of the Republicans are dear friends. I like these guys. Some of the Democrats that are running are great folks. Chip, I think that we got about 6 seconds. I think that one could be interesting.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I'm going to be watching a lot of those suburban districts in Birmingham. I'm looking at Lee County and Tuscaloosa County on that night, and even up in Madison and Huntsville as well to see how it changes.
Well, let's take a quick break, and we're going to come back and celebrate 5 years of the voice of Alabama politics.
2/3 of drivers who died in car crashes chose to ignore this warning. Seatbelts save lives. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Happy anniversary, baby. Got you on my...
Welcome back to the V, where we're celebrating 5 years of news and opinions, Susan.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary to you.
It's been a great time.
It has been a miracle that we've made it this long. Our viewers, our sponsors, our good friends have helped us made it through. Other than you and I, Jonathan has been with us the longest. Jonathan has kept the show looking good and professional despite of the rest of us.
Well, I try, and it's been tough. You know, we've moved into a new studio. That's done well. But in 5 years, it's been so much fun for 5 years, covering all the stories, going to the shoots that we did on location. And I remember our first episode we did was horrible.
It was absolutely
horrible.
awful.
I'll never forget that.
It was horrible.
5 years later, we've got our own studio. We've got the great talent, and I'm just thankful to be here. I'm thankful for you two keeping it real in Montgomery.
Yeah, well, you made us look good, and the reason that first episode was so bad is because Joel wasn't here. He came on the second episode.
Yes, I've been here 5 years, and it has been a wonderful experience. Definitely great people to work with, and I can't say more other than thank you very much for the opportunity.
Well, we're glad to have you. Jack, you're coming in. You've been here about 4.5, almost 5 years.
It's been entertaining. It's been fun. It's been challenging. It's been real. That's for damn sure. If you ever thought you were on a pedestal, come be on this show.
Because y'all don't see everything that goes on off camera.
Nobody is safe.
We were filming Family Feud before it started.
Well,
we got over that.
Nobody's safe from ridicule. Chip, at honing in a little more than 2 years, you've been a great addition.
2 years of wondering every week if we're going to make it to the next.
We don't know how close we got sometimes.
It's so
we
fun.
had a lot of help.
It's so fun though, and to be on the show for this long and to have this experience, I really appreciate y'all letting me do this and to feel like I'm making a difference in terms of Alabama politics and people in our state.
And
I really
you also
appreciate
do a lot behind the scenes too, with the website every day and the redesign and all of that. So
thank you.
You do a
And
great
Charlie,
job.
you play chief cook and bottle washer, and also on-air talent.
Yes, I do.
You've been here a little over a year. How's it been for you?
It's been wonderful for me. Y'all, in the best sense of it, y'all have absolutely rocked my world. You've turned it upside down, so I'm utterly thankful.
Well, you're a great addition to the team.
Yeah. We are thankful for our viewers, we're thankful for our sponsors, and we're mostly thankful that we get to serve the state of Alabama. And I get to say this one more time. You watch us because we watch them. Thank you very much.
Let me grab some.
That much hot air for one candle? Jesus.